I thought it was catastrophic for Joe Biden. He was incoherent, often inaudible. He lost the thread of his argument several times. Some of his answers made simply no sense at all.
Whoever is going to win that race and be in the Oval Office, there'll be huge consequences for the rest of the world and, of course, us in the United Kingdom. Could this change the UK's special relationship with America? Well, joining us now is Lord Kim Darroch, former UK ambassador to Washington and a former national security advisor. Kim, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for joining us. Just first of all, let's start with your reaction to last night's extraordinary debate.
I agree with what you said in your introduction, Ayesha. I thought it was catastrophic for Joe Biden. He was incoherent, often inaudible. He lost the thread of his argument several times. Some of his answers made simply no sense at all. He looked his age, and more than that, I mean, he's 3 years apart from Donald Trump. They look 30 years apart. Trump actually was fairly terrible too, in that everything he said was either a wild exaggeration or a complete fantasy. But the difference was that he was fluent and coherent and sounded quite commanding in expounding these fantasies. So there was a very stark contrast between the two of them. And for me, much as I've met and liked and admired Joe Biden, and he's been in politics in America for more than half a century, 8 years as vice president, 4 years as president. I thought this was career ending, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you, and that seems to be the conclusion of so many, respected commentators across the political spectrum in America and here. Now, we heard there from Mark Lotter, who was obviously feeling very confident and bullish this morning and has every right to be after that debate. If Donald Trump wins and if the Labour Party wins here, how does a new British government led by Keir Starmer, David Lammy, let's say he will still be Foreign Secretary, how do they navigate a Trump administration, particularly on very difficult issues like Ukraine?
Yeah. First, just to say, Aisha, the Republicans should be careful what they wish for, because the age issue, the physical and potentially mental frailty around Joe Biden has been a factor for a long time. And last night was essentially confirmation that there was an issue here. But let's just suppose, because it is possible, if Biden voluntarily withdraws before the convention in August, it is possible that they will come up with a new candidate who might just prove to be tremendous debater, energetic, charismatic, everything that Donald Trump doesn't want to see in his opponent. Karl Rove, who was George Bush Jr.'s election guru, said, the first party in the 2024 election that chooses someone new and young and dynamic is going to win this election, because the American public want neither of these names on the ballot box, on the ballot. So, there's a lot, for different reasons from your previous contributor, there's a lot of time still to go in this election and a lot can happen.
Okay, so that's an important point. Yeah, that's an important point.
On the consequences for the UK, look, the British government is going to have to, and let's just say, stab in the dark, distant possibility, it's a Labour government next. They're going to have to work with whoever is in the White House in Washington after the 5th of November. And on present track, it could well be Donald Trump. And that is going to be difficult. Going to be difficult for all Europeans, actually, maybe everyone else around the world. But it's going to be very difficult for us. And there isn't a natural affinity between the Republican Party and the centre-left British government. But what I would say on this is when we had a Conservative government during Trump 1, we got absolutely no favours out of the Trump White House or anything, including various trade tariffs they levied against Europe. So, it's not going to be like if we stayed with the Sunak government, it would be dramatically better. There is no evidence it would be any better at all. Everyone will have to make the best of it. Everyone will have to try and find arguments that will persuade a Trump administration, a Trump 2.0 administration, against things like withdrawing or weakening NATO or stopping weapons supplies to Ukraine. We'll all be in it together. It'll be an uphill task, but we will have to make the best of
Mm.
it.
And there was a really interesting long piece in the Sunday Times. It's probably like a month or so ago, Kim, which you probably read from the great Tim Shipman. And it was just after David Lammy had come back from Washington, where he had been meeting with Team Biden, but he had also been meeting with Team Trump. I actually did an event with David Lammy just after he got back, and he was saying, look, he actually has to engage. And, David Lammy's made his views on Donald Trump clear before, but he said, now, I have to engage with him. And he actually said he had very productive meetings with Donald Trump's team. He told me that they were much more organised and disciplined and rigorous than they had been, at the last presidential campaign. And in Tim Shipman's piece, there was a suggestion from David Lammy's team that David Lammy almost wanted to befriend the Trump team, be a sort of Trump whisperer, if you like. Do you think there's any chance of that actually happening or working?
I think David Lammy has done a good job as Shadow Foreign Secretary, and I read that piece as well from the great Shipman. And I also read that separately he managed to get Keir Starmer invited to the D-Day celebrations in Normandy, which turned out to be a real coup for him, as the Prime Minister left early. So I think David Lammy has done some good stuff in the last few months. And I've always thought he would actually be confirmed as Foreign Secretary should Labour win, and I think that even more now. And I think it was important that he went and established some relationships with the Trump team. They are much better organised this time round. They couldn't, I promise you, be less well organised than they were in 2016. So there's no surprise. And, this is the time to go and see them and to establish some relationships. And so good on him to have done it and made them maybe a little more positive at the outset about Britain having a Labour government. Does that mean, though, because we've made efforts back in 2016 to establish links with the Trump team before they won, does it mean that there will be concessions for us as and when he starts coming in and firing trade tariffs off in all sorts of directions and being critical of NATO and so on? I have my doubts, but you have to try. That's what diplomacy is about.
Well, look, Kim, as ever, always a pleasure to catch up with you and get your insight. Thanks for your time. That's Lord Darroch, former UK ambassador, our man in Washington, and former national security advisor.